Dr. Clara Martinez woke up to the sound of rain hitting her apartment window. The gray sky seemed to mirror her mood. It had been a difficult month, the most difficult of her career. She had lost her job at the city's main hospital, accused of committing a medical error that had caused the death of a patient. Although she knew she had scrupulously followed every procedure, nothing seemed to be able to change the fate of Ricardo Valenti, the man who had been under her care. Before continuing, subscribe to our channel and activate the bell. She still thought about the harsh words of the head physician, Dr. Venturi, who had shouted at her without giving weight to her explanations. "There is no room for mistakes here, doctor. A man died after your treatment, and you are responsible for it." Every time those words echoed in her head, Clara felt an unbearable weight on her chest. She couldn't free herself from the feeling of guilt, even though she knew she had done nothing wrong. That day she decided to do something she never imagined she would do. After days of reflection and lonely tears, she calmly dressed and took an umbrella. She would visit the cemetery where Ricardo had been buried. She wanted to deal with her pain, her sense of failure, and seek some kind of inner peace. Maybe somehow, apologizing to the deceased would bring her relief. Arriving at the cemetery, Clara walked among the graves in the rain, her steps sinking slightly into the soft earth. She stopped in front of Ricardo Valenti's grave, a white marble headstone framed by fresh, well-kept flowers. The thought that this was the final resting place of the man whose life she had fought to save tightened her heart. She placed a wreath of white carnations beside the cross. "I'm sorry," she whispered softly, tears filling her eyes. She wanted to do more. She was convinced that if she had more time, she would have been able to find a solution. But something had been wrong from the beginning. Her symptoms had been vague and difficult to diagnose. It had all happened too quickly. Just as she was lost in thought, she heard two male voices speaking in a foreign language. She turned slightly and saw two men in dark clothes near Ricardo's grave. They seemed indifferent to the solemnity of the place. Clara shouldn't have given those people any importance, but their words, even if spoken in a different language, made her shiver. "Is that the famous doctor? I wonder if she really knows who's crying," one of the men said, laughing maliciously. Clara pretended not to understand, but she knew that language, having studied it during her university years. She continued to remain still, but those words left her with a feeling of uneasiness. What did they know about Ricardo that she didn't? The two men walked away laughing, and silence fell over the cemetery again. But just then, a strange sound reached her ears. A moan. Clara turned sharply toward the grave. The noise seemed to come from below. She approached, thinking it was a hallucination dictated by tiredness and tension, but the moan came again, louder and more desperate. Her heart began to beat hard in her chest. Someone was moaning underground. Without wasting time, he ran to the cemetery caretaker's booth. "Please, there's someone alive in the grave," he shouted, knocking forcefully on the door. An old man, his face lined by the years and his expression tired, opened the door. "Miss, what's going on?" he asked in a hoarse voice, confused by Clara's agitation. Clara, still trembling, explained the situation to him. The caretaker, incredulous but curious, grabbed a shovel and a flashlight. "Let's go see," he said calmly, following Clara to Ricardo's grave. Together they began to dig, sinking the shovel into the damp, cool earth. After half an hour of work, the coffin lid appeared, cracked. With her heart in her throat, Clara watched as the caretaker pushed back the lid of the coffin. To their dismay, they discovered that inside was not Ricardo's body, but an unknown man, pale and visibly strained but still alive. "Help! Where am I?" The man stammered, struggling to get up. Clara was speechless. That face, those clothes, were not Ricardo Valenti's. It was a completely different man, a stranger. "We have to call an ambulance," Clara exclaimed, trying to remain calm. The man, who introduced himself as Paolo, told a shocking story. He had been attracted by an offer of temporary work as an undertaker. He had been taken to an interview, but afterward, everything had gone dark. They took Paolo to the safety of the guardhouse, where he tried to recover. Clara, however, could not help but wonder what was happening. How could a vagabond have been buried in place of Riccardo Valenti? Someone had orchestrated it all, but why? She decided to contact Luca, an old friend who worked in the police force. She told him every detail: Riccardo's death, the medical error she had been accused of, and the discovery of Paolo in the coffin. Luca listened carefully and promised her he would investigate. In the days that followed, Clara did not stop searching for answers. She began to dig into Riccardo's past, talking to his former colleagues, partners, and employees. She discovered that Riccardo was not only a respected businessman, but was also involved in shady and dangerous business. He had large debts and connections with influential people. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, but the picture that emerged was even more disturbing. A turning point came when Luca called her with shocking news. Riccardo Valenti was not dead. He had been spotted abroad, hidden and protected by some powerful allies. He faked his death to escape his creditors, Luca explained. Clara couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had lost her job, she had been accused of a fatal medical error, and all because of a man who had faked his own death. She was furious. But her anger quickly turned into a fierce determination. Riccardo couldn't get away with this. She decided not to give up. With the help of Luca and international authorities, Clara began to collaborate in tracking down Riccardo. The investigation expanded internationally, revealing a network of criminal affairs involving several people and organizations. After weeks of searching, Riccardo was finally located and arrested. His extradition was met with great media outcry. During the trial, Clara was called to testify. She told everything she had discovered, revealing the background of what had been a fake death orchestrated by Riccardo to escape his responsibilities. The evidence collected was overwhelming, and in the end, justice triumphed. With the truth finally out and her name cleared, Clara was able to return to work. Paolo, who had been used as a scapegoat, finally found peace and a new beginning. Clara helped him find a job and a safe place to live, keeping her promise not to abandon him. And then on a quiet autumn day, Clara returned to the cemetery, but this time not to cry. As she walked among the graves, her gaze rose to the clear sky. She felt she had won an important battle, not only against the injustices she had suffered, but also against herself and her doubts. As she walked away from the cemetery, a sense of peace and satisfaction came over her. She had found her integrity, and most importantly, her self-confidence. The feeling of injustice and failure that had accompanied her for so long had finally vanished, giving way to a new realization. No matter how dark the path seems, the truth always finds its way. Did you like this story? Leave a comment below. Thanks for watching the video till the end, and see you next story.